Welcome to rHatchery.live. My name is Jose Leal, and I'm here with Matt Perez, my partner in crime from rHatchery. And today's guest, we have Gustavo Mendes, all the way from São Paulo, Brazil. Bom dia.
Bom dia, bom dia. Nice talking to you. I think I'm a little bit crazy about accepting this invitation to talk in English for 30 minutes, but I swear that I'll do my best.
So far,
Happy to be here.
very good. So
you're doing well.
Thank you for doing it. I know how stressful it is. I've done interviews in Portuguese, which is, having speaking that much Portuguese is kind of scary. But we've had the opportunity of meeting a few years ago when I was in São Paulo, and we understood each other perfectly. So I'm sure we'll do that again today. So tell us, Gustavo, a little bit about how you got to be worried about work, how we organize, how we organize organizations, and especially about the work you're doing with Coonecta.
Okay. Well, I worked for lots of years doing conferences for big companies, for big corporations. And I noticed that sometimes the speech, what people were talking about, a lot of purpose, ownership, to have, we used it to do a lot of HR conference, and lots of people are saying about the problem that they need to have employees with the owner mindset. But how you do that if you are squeezing the employees? And I saw that as a problem, but I didn't know the right tools. I didn't know what's the way to do this in a different way. And someday I had to make the content of a conference for co-ops in this other company I worked. And then I saw this way in the co-op model, because I think that co-ops are a model that is tested for lots of years. It's working now. And I think that they just need some new fit for this digital economy. So what I did, 1 year before the pandemics, I think that in the worst timing ever, I opened my business. I opened this business called Coonecta. Coonecta is a small company. We are based in São Paulo, Brazil, that we have a clear vision to create. We see that we need an entrepreneurial ecosystem of co-ops, because I saw how an ecosystem of open innovation, of startups work well. It works very well how people connect each other, and different organizations with different objectives connect each other to do something new. And for me, it was clear that we needed something similar to that, but for co-ops, with the co-ops purpose. And this changes everything, because co-ops are people uniting, getting together to solve a problem, doing an economic activity. And this purpose, this co-op purpose, I think that is very different from an startup and an open innovation ecosystem of big corporations. I think that the main purpose of this ecosystem of big corporations, they are the equity. I see this ecosystem working. That I think that everything works around the equity. Startups are looking for equity to investors. Investors are looking for great startups to invest in. That makes the wheel turns.
Mhm.
And how we do that in co-ops? And certainly it's not equity, because co-ops don't have equity. So I started to research, to unite people to think about that. And I was very happy to see that there are movement, that is a movement that is happening all around the world. We have lots of examples of new co-ops existing, and people trying, testing the versatility of the co-op model. I believe that the co-op model is very versatile, but we need to test the same way startups tested some models. I think that we need to test some models in an ecosystem of co-ops. We work for that in Coonecta. It's a dream, but it's a long distance dream. We are just in the beginning, and we see the work we are doing here in Coonecta, something similar, the work you are doing there in Radicals. We are now in this time working the top of the funnel. We are putting ideas. We are talking to people to see the same as we see, to share. And it's a long journey, but
Yeah.
that we are passionate about.
The co-ops has a story for us too, because early on when Matt and I started collaborating and talking about our own experience, Matt's experience with running a co-managed, what we now call a co-managed or a self-managed organization, the largest in Mexico, and my experience with corporate and how to definitely not do all of those things, and us trying to work through what's the right model, as you say, for moving forward. One of the things we did is we got on a train here in the Bay Area and we went up to Sacramento, and there was a national conference. This was what, Matt, about 3 or 4 years ago?
More like 5.
Maybe closer to 5. And what we experienced in there was very much what you're describing, which is this understanding that ownership is actually a key part of, if we can't feel like owners unless we really are owners.
Yeah.
And the understanding that even this idea of, oh, I have, 1 share or 100 shares or 1,000 shares, that I'm not an owner, I'm an investor. And really that changes, because ownership isn't just about having an interest in the business, but it's having the ability to change how it works, to alter what it does and how it does it. And that doesn't happen with just being a shareholder, an investor, minority shareholder in an organization. So I think that the insight that you had was very similar to ours. We walked away realizing that, and I think really that day was the basis of our book, which is, you need both. You need co-ownership and you need co-management. And we learned at the same time that most of the co-ops do a good job of cooperating inside the organization, but they're still, right? They still have hierarchy.
Exactly.
And that to us is still an issue, because you own, but you don't really control, because you then assign somebody the responsibility of leading the organization. That sounds like pretty much your insight as well.
I think exactly as you think. Yeah, I think that that co-ops they have a beautiful story, and there's an important background to support this new vision of how things should work. But in management, they are they are not modern, and they need to modern that. I know that this structure, very vertical, of co-ops, there's a reason. Of course, they need a governance structure, like for example, a credit union. Yeah, they have sometimes thousands of co-op cooperators, associates, and they need to have this governance. But if with technology we could make this governance something more fast, more simple, and we have some examples today that are working. For example, that there's a famous co-op in Canada called Stocksy, that they are basically a image and video bank of artists, and they have associates from all around the world, and they have a very modern structure of governance that works with tech. They put technology to work in this decision structure. Yeah, it's not because we have a co-op that we need to all the people get in the same room and raise their hands. You can test new structures, and it's this kind of co-op that I think that can change the game. And if we analyze the big companies that are growing today, they have a platform model. Yeah, they are pairing interactions between 2 points, consumers and producers. So if we have someone here pairing interactions between these 2 points, and we something we have clear is that the most valuable resource of a platform is its network. Platforms, they are very good in extracting value from everyone who uses it, even if you are not an employee of that. So they extract value from the community. The data is from the community. So why not having platforms that are collective owned? That's the dream. The long distance dream is not for now, but we have some co-ops starting to do that, and I was very happy to see that the vision I had, that I think that was just a dream, when I went to, for example, to the first conference of platform co-ops in New York in 2019. I saw their ecosystem. I saw people sharing and with the same purpose, and thinking how do we get cheap money like startups to make this happen, how we use the technology, how we do that. So I saw this ecosystem in the beginning and happening, but it's still, of course, not a very big and strong ecosystem. But it is possible, and it's beginning. It's in the beginning, and I think that we will have something great news in next years.
Would you describe it, and we're familiar with that, it was actually back to that conference where we met the author of that book, who presented
Trevor shows,
who presented that. So yeah, we followed much of the same that you're describing. One of the things that we think is a critical part, and one of the reasons we call it radical, is that we have an understanding that really the root of an organization, whatever format that organization is, if it's a platform or a network or a collaborative or a co-op, the root is always the person. It's always the human being, right? And when we make it more about the technology, we lose the humanness of it. So one of the models that we really like, and I'm sure you know of this, but it speaks to a little bit of that difference. It's really technology as a service, teams as organization, right? And Bertzo in the Netherlands, I'm sure you know of them. To us, seems like they've hit upon a really interesting approach, which is the decision making is at the team level, and so you don't need to scale decision making beyond certain things. But then you have the technology that helps with the providing services and clarity and communication and all of that, and obviously transparency. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that it's how it should work, and I think so. Some co-ops have this structure in working, but the problem I think is in the level of the team management, because they have a decentralized structure. It is very interesting if you see the structure of the big credit unions in Brazil. And I don't know if you know, here in Brazil that the financial services are very, very modern. It's a country known for its banking service. And the credit unions, what they did, they works as a franchising model, as a network. You have a federation taking care of this techy part of the banking system, and you have small co-ops operating, small teams operating in their region. In that the point to do this touch with the clients, with the associates of the co-ops. And it's interesting that I think that this model fits perfectly for platform co-ops. For example, we have a platform co-op that is Co-op Cycle, that they do exactly the same. They have a federation taking care of the brand and the tech part, and they have small teams that are small co-ops associated to this federation that do this job in that point, in that point with the client. But I think that the existing co-op, the traditional co-ops that works in this model, the problem is the team management. I think they are too vertical, and the decisions in terms of decision making structure, I think that they are much more traditional than some startups and some corporations, including. But putting this part of the team management aside, I think that the root of a co-op is much more modern than people think. I think that co-ops, they are ahead of their time, and we can't see the nowadays co-ops analyze what co-ops can do, looking for these co-ops that have 34, 50 years. They had a governance structure to take care. It's something different, but I think that's why I think we need co-op techs, something that I call co-op techs. We need startups, co-ops startups, because we need to test new models, and this is so new that we can do this big experiment with huge co-ops. It's too risky to do that. That's why we believe in creating an ecosystem of startups to look for this. And something that I I was to this live. I was studying about radical, and for me, it was very interesting. Before knowing radicals, I thought that maybe it wouldn't have had a fit with co-ops. It's or that or this or that. But after reading a little bit, I think it's completely different. I think that you can help to change this part of team management and governance structure that co-ops needs to do. I don't know the all the details of your purpose, but I think that we have an interesting fit with co-ops and radicals.
Well, the big difference that I see between, because we research co-ops like Jose said, and the big difference in the ownership part is that one person, one vote. In other words, there's three of us. We form a co-op. You own a third, I own the third, and Jose owns the third. And that doesn't work. So from our point of view, it's the difference between what you call equity, I call capital. If I have a lot of money, I get a lot of equity, and that is unfair because a number of reasons. But anyways, so rather than be based on capital, that it be based on contributions. And that way, this month you can have more than me, and I can have more than Jose, and that's fine. But next month, Jose has the most. I still have more than you, but like that, it's dynamic. It's not one person, one vote forever, no matter what. And that's a big, on the ownership part, the big problem that I see, plus the pyramid, as Jose described, and you describe as well, that it's all about the financial aspect. Co-ops are all about financials and not about the governance, the management part. Now, in small co-ops, when it's like 3, 10, 20, we all know each other and stuff like that. That works well. We met with a group from I don't know where they were from, but anyways, the people in the group, it was a handful of people, all cleaning houses, all Hispanic, and they all knew each other and they laughed with each other and stuff like that. So I'm sure they had none of the governance problems because people knowing each other makes a difference. But once it gets big, like Mondragon in Spain, which is the biggest thing there is, they continue to be very generous on the financial side, but they're very traditional in the management side. And what we look at is decentralized governance or management, decentralized ownership. That's it. We try to keep it simple. We do have a tool, but it's very simple. I see something, it's happening, I like it, I think it's a contribution, I press a button. That's it. There's, you can join the community and not join the community or whatever, but outside of that, the action that you take is very, very simple.
And yeah,
that's a way to do centralized ownership.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that because Gustavo, one of the things that we were saying earlier is it's about the human, right? And life is a dynamic thing. If we assume that every human is going to be contributing equally from day one, right? And then they don't because life is a dynamic thing, then now I'm feeling like you're not contributing to the level that you're equal to me. Why aren't you working equal to me? Why aren't you contributing in the same that I am? And so that going back to understanding that it's dynamic and we need for the mechanics to also be dynamic. And so that's really, I think, the goal that Matt has described there is, how do we both have a dynamic management and dynamic ownership?
Right.
And in the case of co-ops, from our perspective, they both are lacking a bit of the dynamics. Though at least they're co-owned, which is much better than the traditional corporation.
Yes.
Right. But it's still not a dynamic ownership. And they're not dynamically managed. So how do you, does that suit that kind of thinking? Does that match what you're seeing in your environment?
Yeah, I got it. It's a challenge for co-ops today, but I think that I have a very good friend that is a lawyer, that he knows a lot about co-ops, and all the time I ask to him, is it possible to do that? Is it possible to do that? And almost all the time he says is, if you put in the contract that, sorry, I don't know, it's not the exact name of the contract, but it's the something that regulates the co-op.
Right.
Operating agreement.
Yeah, something like an operating agreement. He says if you put in contract, the co-ops will accept almost everything. So about the payment, you can of course pay employers according to how they generate revenue for the co-op. About the vote, I think that the vote is something much more complex. I think that it's possible to, I don't know if I would use the word fix, but I think that if we want to have co-ops in this digital economy to make this vision happen, it's something that we need to analyze more near. But it's important to notice also that we have some co-ops that are something like client owned, like the credit union. In this case, I think that this one vote, one person, one vote, I don't think that is a challenge or something that we need to fix. But if we have a co-op that is owned by the workers, a worker co-op, I think that maybe it's something, a challenge to
address.
To try, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, you can put things in contracts and stuff like that. But the laws, at least in the U.S., about co-ops are very strict. You can lose your co-op status if you do things that are extreme, or if anybody complains, or it's Wednesday, or the moon is half the moon. There's all kinds of reasons for sticking to the narrow thing. So yeah, lawyers will tell you on the one hand, you can do anything you want so long as you put in a contract, an operating agreement. But on the other hand, they tell you, but don't go too far, because this is where I can defend you in this range, not in this range. And so, and that's, to me, is the problem that the current system with its laws has adopted co-ops as a safe thing. That doesn't smell right to me.
Yeah, I agree. Here in Brazil, the law is very strict, and maybe because co-ops have some lower taxes, so I think that the government we're gonna make it very strict, and I understand that, because we, for example, here in Brazil, we had lots of problems with worker co-ops, that it wasn't really a worker co-op. It was a big company that said the workers, you have to create a co-op, so we are gonna contract this co-op, but they are only workers for this big company, and this big company did that just to
Reduce
pay
costs.
less. Yeah. So
Yeah, in
I
Italy, it's
know.
the same.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge, and but I still think that the biggest challenge is this management challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That is what you said. Co-op don't the co-op principles don't go to this management
Right.
level,
No, it doesn't.
and they need something to use it as a model. And what I see here, also here in Brazil, is that we have huge co-ops that brings a lot of executives from big corporations, and these co-ops sometimes they lost
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
this feeling of co-op. And for example, what I say to almost all credit unions that I have some meeting, I say to them, you are almost all credit unions here are supporting, have startups. They have programs to connect with startups. And I say to them, why don't you connect with new co-ops? We have some new co-ops here in Brazil that need support. Why not doing that? Why just doing that with startups? And I think that maybe it's the problem with this corporate culture
Mm-hmm.
that is in the big co-ops here
Right.
in Brazil.
Right. Yeah, and I was just thinking about that actually yesterday. My partner Laura is a member of REI, which is a big co-op here for outdoor equipment and sporting equipment and that kind of stuff. And you pay a small membership fee, and you're a member, and then you get some refund depending on how much you spend. Typical type of consumer co-op. And I asked her what's the difference. She says nothing. Really. I have a card, I'm a member, and they call me a member, and they send me a little note every once in a while reminding me that I'm a member, but I'm not actually engaged. And that's back to the human part. Because if I walk into REI and it feels like walking into Walmart, and the transactions are the same, except you get called a member instead of a customer, what's changed, right? And so I think the idea of co-opting the co-op as a way of sort of co-oping, as far as like whitewashing the corporation and saying, oh, we're a co-op, we're nice now, right? That's nice, but is it really doing something different if they're just operating with corporate rules?
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're describing. We're bringing executives, we're bringing business practices in and out of co-ops that are the same as corporations. So the mindset is going to be the corporate influence.
Right.
And we're just going to suffer from that.
So what do you actually do? Are you a consultant to co-ops or?
Yeah, I think the most important steps we are doing to make this vision happen are two projects that we have today. One is called Radar Co-op, that we are using we are mapping the co-op ecosystem using a methodology of MIT Lab to map the organizations that can help the entrepreneurial co-ops and innovative co-ops. So we doing this effort make this ecosystem happen. And I think that the first step is to map that. We need to map that and show that to outside the co-op bubble, we say. But we say also from inside, to show inside the bubble, because the big co-ops don't even know that this exists. And we have very important movements happening here in Brazil that we need to show that. Então, so first we are mapping and showing what they are doing. And I put a Portuguese word here. Sorry, you got it. Sorry. And the other project, it's an accelerating program to accelerate ideas of co-ops that we are calling it Acelera Copy. It's a name in Portuguese. And we are also talking with another accelerators of co-ops and incubators of co-ops in Latin America to create this network of Latin American co-ops to help incubate and accelerate these co-ops. And we see our role in Coonecta, as the name says, in an actor that connects the actors, the organizations, to make this innovation and entrepreneurial co-ops to see this innovation happens. So that's what we do. This project Radar Cop that we do with a credit union that have this vision like us, that is Sicredi Pioneira, and they have a project called Complexo Lab that they have the same vision in Coonecta, that we need to support co-ops. So we do this to make this innovation happens. And the Radar Coonecta, the objective is to map, promote, and connect the actors, the organizations of this ecosystem that are still a small ecosystem. We have, I think, that 60 organizations mapped, but we are going to start to promote this ecosystem to see if we can make this difference and this change happen, not only from inside to outside, but also from outside, from inside. We need to bring more techie people to the co-ops, more programmers, more entrepreneurships, more entrepreneurs to the co-ops. That's what we are trying to do with that.
Right. Co-ops have been traditionally strong in very niche areas.
Yeah.
Right. And so there isn't really the breadth, the diversity of co-ops.
Yeah.
So finding a way to grow diversity, that makes a lot of sense. So that's beautiful work.
And there's a group in San Francisco. We went to a couple of meetings. I don't remember the names, but they're trying to bring capital into co-ops, and so they give them some money but very little, and stuff like that. And they're also, I don't know if they're connecting people or mapping as much.
I know a group called Start.coop.
Those are the guys from out. They're active here as well, but they're mostly from out east, and they're doing incubator type model, which is also helpful. Again, we have questions about how are we, dealing with the ownership and the management side of things.
Yeah, it's a very important job because I think that the key to make this happen is how we attract cheap capital cheap investment to these co-ops, because startups, they can sell equity. How do we do that for co-ops to make these co-ops scale. I think that it's an important challenge.
We have some
also.
ideas on that. We should have some conversations.
Yeah, let's talk.
At this point, I get to plug the book. You mentioned several times, and it's called Radical Companies Without Bosses or Employees. And you can find it on Kindle and all the rest of them. And next week's guest, Peter Green, co-founder of Humanizing Work. And it's a company that makes work more fit for humans and humans more capable of doing great work. So we'll find out what that means next week.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Gustavo, it's been a little longer than 30 minutes, but it's been a really good conversation.
Yeah,
I'd love to have you back and to speak a little bit more about the details of what you guys are doing and how our two communities can work together, because I think we're really trying to do the same thing under a different name. And so I think that would be interesting. And talking about the ecosystem, let's look at a global ecosystem, not just a Brazil or a São Paulo ecosystem, and how do we collaborate on that? So
yeah, I think we see the same monster, but we are only using the different weapon to attack this monster. But we see the same problem. For me, it's clear that, and it was a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for the invitation.
absolutely.
absolutely, yeah.
And please, if your colleagues that you've connected with, you think would be interesting conversations for us to learn more about what's going on. You talked about a group out in Canada that's working with, I've heard of them as well, but if you know somebody there, it'd be interesting to have a conversation with them. So thank you for your time, and thank you for what you're doing, because this helps everybody.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the chat.
All righty.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
You stay.